Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I constantly explore the strange new worlds of political theory. Actually, I don't do it very often because I'm not much of a political scientist, but I do live on the moon, which is why I come to you live from Crater Valley Moon! With Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Thursday. Terrestrial Thursday, at least for you, because I'm lunatic. Anyway, hope everybody's doing on this beautiful Thursday evening. Yes, we return once again to the wonderful world of off-brand TED Talks for education and enlightenment. And tonight we're going to be talking about democracy. Does democracy work anymore? As I joked in the promos for this episode, well, I guess it depends on whether or not you employ a democratic process to choose your party's candidate for president. But it's unknown whether or not this was recorded before or after that event, so I suppose we'll find out together. But otherwise, who's joining me on this beautiful Thursday evening? Advocast Diaboli, good evening. Kiever Dam, good evening to you, and thank you, Kiever Dam, as always, for providing the links to the fundraisers for our friends AJ, Roan Harushan, Natalie, and Angela Ariaga. If you guys could take a look at those when you have the opportunity. Donate if you are able to, please. If not, that's fine, but if you can, share those out on social media regardless. That would be appreciated, and thank you ahead of time for your generosity there. And thank you, Kiever Dam, as always, for providing those. Rotten Corpse, good evening. Datura Jones, good evening. Tier Alexander, good evening to you. Vader35, good evening. Mike R. Good evening. Noah Sentio. Good evening to you. Bob J. Boblin, FTG Farms Incorporated. Well, hey, Bob. Josh Hammond. Good evening. Bishop. Good evening to you. Rabbit. What the hell? Why not? Exactly. That's the attitude that I appreciate. It's like, gosh, Scribe's on the air. Why not? I appreciate that. You know, I just barely crossed the threshold of your interest. You're telling me there's a chance. All right. Thank you. Angelverse, good evening. Kiro Soldier, good evening. The Best Remy, good evening. Ryan R, good evening. Full Metal Joker, good evening. Shell D, good evening. The Blakester, good evening to you. Attack Alpaca, good evening. Who else is here? Simon Willikins, good evening. And Cynic, good evening to you. And to anybody I missed, I hope not, anybody who's lurking or anybody in the future, good evening. Yes, so tonight, given the political nature of the season, of the turn at the wheel once again for a presidential election in the next 2 and some odd days of change months, can democracy still work? And when I hear something like that, my first thought is, well, Scribe, you're not a political scientist, so it's likely you're either going to have things go way over your head if this person is a professional academic or something, and or you're going to say things that are completely off base and incorrect. And if that is the case, I invite anybody in the chat now or listening in the future in the comments to correct me, because I do not claim to be an expert on such things. The other thing I also think of is someone going to tell me that there's a better way than democracy? And is that going to be social communism? Something like that? I don't know. I guess we'll find out together. Let's see. Tonight's bingo card is bingo card C. C as in presidential democracy. That was the winner of the poll, which is, I suppose, a kind of democracy in a way. To choose the bingo card for tonight, links to the bingo cards are in the description below. That's bingo card C. Anything else I want to mention before I begin? I don't think so. Oh, well, yes, if you listen to the very end of the stream, or you just scan to the end of the stream, you'll find out the secret word that will allow you to join the Discord server. You have to wait for that, though. Antler the Mad, good evening. Spider-Man, good evening. Keldrig, good evening to you. Anybody else before I begin? I don't see anybody. All right, well, with that, let's start off with our democracy. Can it still work? I'll begin with a couple of seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it, and then we will proceed.
I'm a journalist.
Uh-oh. Well, that's your first problem right there. Guys, hear that okay? I'm a journalist. Uh-oh. Well, credibility question already floating over her head. But that's just the way it is. The vote is in. I can hear it, says Advocatus. Tier Alexander says, the secret word, a secret. You have to wait for it. Yes, that's right. And 5x5, says Kiro Soldier. Whenever I think of 5x5, I think of StarCraft for some reason. I don't know why that is. Nerds will know.
Journalism requires a free society.
Well, a healthy and functioning journalism does. Sure, you can have journalists in completely totalitarian societies. They can call themselves journalists if they actually adhere to the values and standards of actual journalism. That's another question. But I'm going to assume you mean in the most idealistic sense that journalism can only exist in a free society.
Where we can pursue the truth
And
share with the public what we learn without fear of reprisal.
No. Sorry to tell you this. Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by reprisal. Okay. If you're talking about like the government comes, kicks in your door, arrests you, etc., preferably not in a free society. That's right. If you're talking about criticism for what you do, no. But I guess you'd have to define, what do you mean by reprisal?
And a free society requires a free press.
Well, yes. Idealistically, yes. True. Yes.
Doing its job, putting checks on abuses of power.
Yes, that is what the Fourth Estate ideally would do. Is that what they do in the modern day? In the mainstream media especially? No, not really. Or at least, let's put it this way. Trust in media to perform that function is at an all-time low. And not for no good reason.
Each needs the other.
Sure.
The enemy of both is authoritarianism.
Is this just going to be an anti-Donald Trump speech by any chance?
Neither a free society nor the free press that helps maintain it can exist in a dictatorship.
You're correct. Ultimately, these things cannot coexist. You're right.
A challenge for journalism is disinformation, which today flows as freely as facts.
Yes, and is journalism immune from distributing quote-unquote disinformation? Or, more often than not, reporting in the absence of information? You know, being very selective in what they report and what they do not. I really hope our speaker is not going to be standing on a pedestal where journalism is some shining beacon of impenetrable virtue. I hope there is some self-criticism here, or at least some awareness of the current condition of her profession.
And often leads to division, fear, and anger. Disinformation is a primary tool of authoritarians. And
okay, you're going to have to define disinformation in this context. Do you mean information that is wrong, like lies or incorrect information? Or are you talking about information that does not make you happy? Because there was a whole lot of quote-unquote disinformation being put out there during the course of the lockdown and the pandemic that ultimately proved out to be true. But people didn't like to hear it at that time, so they called it disinformation. I know, I'm pausing a lot here. It's because of YouTube, but also because I have a lot to say.
Centralizing power, politicizing independent institutions, scapegoating vulnerable populations, and
oh boy, okay. I can already tell we're gonna go into some interesting territory here, and we're already a minute in. Let me go over the bingo card once to remind ourselves what we're listening for, and if we've already hit on something. Remember, this is bingo card C. Links are in the description. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, not yet. Word salad, we might get there. Mind reading or assumes motives, again, we might get there. A list, no, wait and see if there's a formal list, like 4 steps to restoring democracy or something. Marginalized marginalization. Vulnerable populations comes close in spirit, but I'm going to wait and see if she actually uses the terms. Patriarchy. Contradicts own point or argument, not sure what it is yet. Feminism, attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase. Systemic or institutional. Again, implied by journalism and authoritarianism, systemic. It's, we'll wait and see what if she says something more specific. Anecdote that probably never happened. Haven't had any yet. White supremacy, not yet. Childhood or family anecdote. Now leaves out vital context. We'll see. Argumentative non sequitur. It's always a tough one. We'll see. Sales pitch for product or service. I guess it depends on if she names her publication, or I think at the beginning it said something about on the intro card that she has a podcast. So if she starts name dropping that, maybe we'll go there. Privilege, not yet. Collectivize his own demographic. I think she might have already done so as a journalist, but we'll wait and see if she goes any further. Self-vilification or wretchedness, not yet. Economic disparity, not yet. Benevolent condescension, we could see that fairly quickly if she's in the journalism is perfect area. Plays victim, we'll see. Weightless example, none yet. And lastly, microaggressions or unconscious bias. So nothing clearly on the board yet. There's plenty implied already in the first minute, but let's see if we get something more specific.
Corrupting election.
I mean, corrupting elections. We're going to talk about January 6th, aren't we?
Independent institutions.
Institutions. There we go. Institutional. Okay. Yeah, no, systemic institutional. Circling that one, and also circling free space. Because I can. I hope someday, I just want to make a little, I hope someday, unless it's already available and I'm just not aware of it, I can have like the bingo card and the video up on the screen at the same time so that you can follow along with the bingo card as I update it. If that is possible yet, if I can have two things displaying on the screen at one time, I don't know of it with StreamYard. StreamYard, if you're listening, that'd be cool. But anyway, moving on.
Independent institutions. Scapegoating vulnerable populations and corrupting elections. These tools and others are used to install and uphold authoritarian regimes.
Really? Okay, now I am going out on a limb here. I don't think it's a very fragile limb, but I'll go out on a limb anyway. If, let's just say, and I don't know why I'd be saying this, if Donald Trump was an analogy for an authoritarian regime, why is he not currently president? Because none of that upheld his authoritarian regime. It all didn't. So
that's how fascism gets the job done.
That's how fascism gets the job done. Oh, okay.
My maternal grandfather.
Oh, childhood or family anecdote. Circling that one on the board. Where did I put it? There it is. Okay, your maternal grandfather
fought in World War II.
Okay.
He returned home to a country that, as a Black man in 1940s Mississippi, well, it didn't quite give him a hero's welcome.
Mm-hmm.
He'd faced down fascism abroad and returned home to face a steep climb toward basic equality.
Yes. In the 1940s.
But he kept climbing.
Mm-hmm.
Along with many others, putting one foot in front of the other
yes.
in pursuit of equal rights.
And we are all the better for it.
I believe he and many Americans post-war believed they protected something precious.
They did. It wasn't a belief, it was a truth.
And that here at home, slowly, imperfectly, but surely they were making progress toward a more perfect union.
Well, yes. As in just, the most significant item in that quest, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And then the slow, gradual process that comes along with a constitutional republic towards change in both law and society, because methodical, slow change tests it over time rather than making some knee-jerk reaction to things. Even a knee-jerk reaction towards something that ultimately is proven out to be a true good. But unfortunately, people in societies don't quite work that way unless you're living under someone or something that just snaps laws into existence out of nowhere and imposes them on everybody. That would be authoritarianism, dictatorship. And then within the last 15, 20 years or so, boy, a lot of people have been trying real hard to push us back in time. But they seem to think that they're pushing us into the future. It's kind of an Alice in Wonderland kind of deal, isn't it?
But are we still making progress?
It's much, much, much slower and stagnated by the woke movement, the social justice warriors, DEI, CRT, a lot of people trying to stand on a soapbox of virtue, saying that, oh, this is the good kind of racism, that kind of thing. So it has stalled. It has stalled because of people that think and keep telling themselves that they're being good.
Progress means becoming more like the country we want.
Well, what do you mean we? Thank you, Chicago Mike. Wait, there were bad things that happened in the past? You don't say. Yeah, if only I had the Nicolas Cage deal in front of me. Yeah, did you know that it was worse in the past in some ways than it is now? Oh, but that would require you to admit that things are better now than they were in the past. But as our speaker is already showing us, no, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed since her grandfather got back from the war. Fundamentally, I guess. The thing is, though, she kind of has a point in that people are really struggling and fighting to push us backwards. But yet they think they're the ones doing the good job. Yeah.
More the country we aspire to be.
Uh-huh.
We seem deeply divided on what exactly that is.
As we always have been. I don't know if you know this, but we are not a hive mind as a country. There are elements in this country that are attempting to make it a hive mind, where there is no question, there is no dissent, there is no opposing opinion. Anything that is said that makes someone feel uncomfortable has to be suppressed and canceled and, well, I mean, just criminalized practically. So, yes, actually, I hate to say this. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but our division is our strength. Our checks and balances on each other, our testing each other as a society for what works and what doesn't, what is preferred versus what is rejected. This is how the balancing act is supposed to work, ultimately, because there is no one way to do things all the time. You know, unless you're talking about like mathematics, but of course, I'm always often told that 2 + 2 = 5 if you think hard enough about it.
Think back to 2017.
2017. Okay, I was into my first year of YouTubing. It was the first full year of the Donald Trump administration. What else happened in 2017? A whole bunch of different movies and stuff came out. Yeah, okay, sorry. Anyway, how old was I? Oh my God, that was, 6 years ago now? Something like that? Right? No, wait, no, 7, no, that was, yeah, 7 years ago. 7 years? Yeah, 7 years ago. Okay, so I was 38. Oh God.
Charlottesville.
Oh, for crying, yeah, okay, yeah. Tell me about Charlottesville. There were fine people on both sides, everybody.
The Jews will not replace us march. A car
Yeah.
plowing through protesters.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, we were seeing Nazi salutes in public.
Oh my God, because that's never happened before. You know, there were KKK marches and rallies throughout this country off and on throughout the 80s and the 90s. I remember news stories about them, right? The police would have to line up on the sides of the roads to protect the marchers from the vast majority of the population jeering them and making fun of them. But yeah, there were. And what happened to the guy who ran his car into the crowd? Obviously, he was hailed as a hero by the entire country. Right? I mean, he was a superhero. Heck, you know, he got his own parade. He wasn't like arrested and prosecuted for murder or nothing. No, but anyway.
And unabashed white supremacists proud of themselves.
Oh, white supremacy on the board, circling that one. Yeah, I will agree. racial supremacy is a bad thing. It doesn't help anybody in any way, shape, or form. In fact, racial identitarianism is pretty much poison, isn't it? Now, tell me, is black supremacy equally as bad an idea? I don't know why I'm asking that.
Celebrating what they saw as their moment of triumph after 8 years of a black president's administration.
Oh, is that what that was? Oh, okay. And obviously, Charlottesville was duplicated across the country. It wasn't an isolated one-off kind of event that was otherwise vilified by 99% of the country in spirit. I mean, at all. No. Yeah. Okay.
As Baratunde Thurston remarked in 2017, how the F are Nazis back?
They weren't Nazis. Here's the thing. I don't know if you know this. The German National Socialists were defeated in World War II. Your grandfather actually contributed to that. They were not. There are no more Nazis. There are people who might cosplay and be posers as such, but there are no more Nazis. You don't have to worry about actual Nazis.
January 6th.
Oh, for what can I say? It's a mild one. It's not exactly, reaching for the stars. All the same. Okay. Anyway.
2021 up the ante.
Did it? Okay, how?
And assaulting traditional democratic institutions.
Really? Because the proceedings proceeded despite it. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but there was an inauguration. Everything went as it was supposed to. January 6th was overall a glorified inconvenience to the process. As dramatic an event as it was, it did not stop the country.
Free elections.
Well, how did it attack a free election? It continued. The election had already happened.
Congress, the peaceful transfer of power.
Sure. I'll give you that last one. It was not a peaceful transfer of power, bureaucratically speaking. It was interrupted briefly, and yet somehow this country did not descend into a civil war as a result of what happened on January 6th. The president was inaugurated and things proceeded apace.
It's easy to forget how shocking it was at the time.
I am not allowed to forget it. No one will allow me to forget it. What was effectively a small, isolated riot that, in comparison to the kinds of things that were taking place in the summer of 2020, was a mosquito bite as compared to a gunshot wound. But, I am not allowed to forget it. It is always told to me it was worse than 9/11, apparently.
And since then, much effort has gone into making us believe it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay. No, there hasn't been a whole lot gone into saying it was not a big deal. There's been a whole lot gone into saying it was worse than 9/11. See, this is, at least in this case, and it is an isolated case, is an anecdotal case in the sense of this one speaker. This is why the profession of journalism is so reviled right now. I'm supposed to be listening to someone who is in a profession of speaking facts, speaking truth. And now she's telling me that January 6th has not been made out to be a big deal, except that she's talking about January 6th. Everybody talks about January 6th. I hear about January 6th more often than I hear about Christmas. Okay? No. This is sort of like, what's that word where you take that that chemical and you add some fire to it and it kind of like illuminates I forget.
These events, the threat of more events like them, the onslaught of misinformation and disinformation.
How many Charlottesvilles have there been since 2017? How many January 6th have there been since January 6th? I mean, Charlottesville was 2017. January 6th was 2021. It's now 2024. How many Charlottesvilles have there been since 2017? In the last 7 years? I mean, you should have more examples, right? You should say Charlottesville begat this, begat this, begat this. Every year or 2 years, we see another Charlottesville. Okay, how many burn down the city riots have there been in Middle America since 2012? How many summers of love have we witnessed since around 2012? Hmm? You're not going to bring those up, are you? I mean, which do you think has been a greater problem and caused greater destruction in this country and more division and unrest? Do you think it's been Charlottesville and January 6th, or do you think it's been the $1 billion fire sale that has occurred at shopping stores and communities in this country nearly every summer since Trayvon Martin died? I don't know. Or Michael Brown in particular. Do you have anything for that at all? I know it's rough. It's tough. I know. Let's see. Thank you again, Chicago Mike. Scribe, there should be a bingo space for someone mentioning January. You know, I have thought about making bingo cards that are sort of crafted towards the presumed theme of a TEDx. The problem is it's such a shot in the dark. So I have to make something that is generic, as broad focused as possible on just TEDx as an institution, and try not to go for subject matter specific. Unless it was something, I did make a bingo card for the Chris Hansen To Catch a Predator series. You know, is Chris Hansen wearing a blue dress shirt was a bingo square. You know, does he say please take a seat? That kind of stuff. Those kind of predictable things. But TEDx is such a font of such disparate topics and situations. Yeah. Anyway, I know that's not what you asked, but I have thought about that before. It has been suggested before. But January 6th is so specific. I don't know that I think it would be a square that would oftentimes not go used. So anyway, that's my long-winded answer to that. Anyway, you were saying, yes, how many more of these very isolated and rare events can we expect after 7 years?
Pouring into the coming election, all of it suggests, among some, a new willingness to accept or even embrace authoritarianism.
Really? Really? Suspicion about the legitimacy of an election is embracing authoritarianism. Right? Having an opposition to a leader that has control or sway over what news articles are allowed to be posted on the internet. That's embracing authoritarianism. I know a party that anoints a nominee for president without any democratic process taking place beforehand, and people criticizing that on the other side of the aisle, that's embracing authoritarianism? I mean, if you say so.
We've seen it happen abroad, but can it really happen here?
Easily. Easily. If people like you start glossing over the truth and start giving only one perspective on things, yes. You're supposed to be part of that institution, right? The journalism, right? The fourth estate that's supposed to check on power. What criticisms do you have about events that occurred under the Biden administration? You've gone back to 2017. You've gone back to 2021. There has been some intervening time since January 6th. I don't know if you're aware. Maybe you'd like to speak about some of that and compare and contrast.
Surely this experiment of American democracy isn't over.
It's not. And don't call me Shirley.
We haven't even gotten the initial results back yet, have we?
What results? Oh, wait. No, sorry. Kamala was just appointed nominee. When was this filmed? If it was filmed before Biden stepped down, all apologies. But even if it was, let's just think about it in the modern context of things. You want to talk about, election by fiat. You want to talk about the absence of a democratic process. I don't know.
And yet a recent Gallup poll
Oh,
suggests only 28% of Americans believe our democracy is working.
well, here's the thing. We're not a democracy. I don't know if you know this. We're a constitutional republic. I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. We don't want democracy to rule the day. There are democratic processes in our systems, but our country is not a democracy. I don't know if you're a journalist, correct? You've done some research on this, right? So if people say our democracy isn't working, like, that's by design.
That's a record low.
Oh, it's a record low.
Another poll from the Harvard Kennedy School of Public Policy suggests only.
Wait, suggest. Do you have any proof or you just have suggestions? I'd appreciate some proof.
Another poll from the Harvard Kennedy School of Public Policy suggests only 9% of young Americans believe our country is headed in the right direction.
Well, only 9% of our young Americans. Well, here's the thing. That doesn't bother me so much. Because again, I don't want unanimity in all things in this country. There has to be a debate. There has to be conflict. Not conflict in the violent sense. I do not want that as much as is possible to avoid. No violent conflict, but conflict of ideas, conflict of values. What does this country want to be based on a sharing and a debate of ideas? So if most of the youth think that this country needs to change, well, I don't know what to tell you. That doesn't tell me that they're all thinking the same thing. Right? That differential alone does not tell me that 91% of the youth in this country are all thinking one direction as far as the country's going in the wrong direction. I mean, they could be thinking of it in different ways, how it should be going. And hopefully they'll have the opportunity to debate those ideas free and clear in the future because of things like an actual free press and an actual freedom of speech. But depending on what they mean or what they're worried about, that might be in danger, especially coming from a press that is telling me what is in front of me isn't actually what's in front of me. Anyway, I could go on. Thank you, Kiro Soldier. Even Kamala has stated that folks 18 to 14 are idiots. Your brain is not fully developed. I'll admit right out here, until I was an idiot from 18 to 24. Right? I look back at some of the things that it was 18 to 20. I don't know, what the hell was I thinking? I wasn't thinking straight because my brain hadn't stopped developing yet. Now it has. So this is as good as it gets. Or this is Jack Nicholson, as I'll say. I'm going to use that as shorthand for that phrase from now on. If I say this is Jack Nicholson, completely out of context and not referring directly to Jack Nicholson, that's what I mean. This is as good as it gets. So anyway, 9% of young people think the country is going in the right direction.
And in truth?
Oh, we're talking about the truth now?
There are both historical and current reasons to support that lack of faith.
Okay. What are you, okay, again, 91% of the youth in this country thinking that the country is not going in the right direction doesn't mean that they're all on the same side, unless you believe there is only one right direction for the country. And that 9% is on your side. Because I'll tell you what, 4.5% of that 9% might be Republicans who think one way about an issue, and the other 4.5% might be Democrats that think another way about an issue, and they both think the country's going in the right direction, except that they are otherwise diametrically opposed in what that means. Again, I'm not a math major. I'm an English major. I'm not a statistician. But anyway.
We all know about slavery.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. We all know about slavery. Advocast Daily brings up a good point in the chat. Leaves out vital context. You're absolutely right. I think I probably buried that point into the dirt up to its neck. So leaves out vital context. Circling that on the board. And we are one square away from a bingo already. Oh my gosh. If she brings up an anecdote that probably never happened, she hasn't yet. I mean, Charlottesville did happen. January 6th did happen. I will stipulate to her grandfather's World War II experience. I've no reason to doubt that. Slavery did happen. I guess it depends. Where are you talking about slavery occurring? I mean, because, slavery happened in a whole bunch of places. I don't know if you're going to talk about that.
But will future Americans know about it?
Oh, for crying out loud. Will future Americans know about slavery? Oh, yes. Yes, because you see, critical race theory is being opposed. And all critical race theory is teaching about slavery, guys. That's all it is. That's all it is. You remember slavery, practiced by nearly every civilization that has ever erupted on this planet at one time or another. But oh, yes, no, the simple concept, the historical fact of slavery is being suppressed because CRT is being opposed in schools, guys. We have to teach CRT. It's only about racism, good racism, and slavery. 1619 Project, everybody.
Since 2021, at least 44 states have introduced laws or made other efforts to limit how teachers include lessons about the history of racism in this country.
No, they put out laws to limit critical race theory. Critical race theory is not teaching about the history of racism in this country. Critical race theory is about dividing the classroom into oppressors and oppressed. It's about telling people that they today either owe some debt or are inherently victimized by events that occurred hundreds of years ago to people that they've never met and have no connection to, and that they still owe a debt or deserve some payout for things that didn't happen to them or they did not actually do themselves. That's what's being pushed back and fought against in those laws, not the teaching of history. You are a journalist, correct? You're here to tell us the truth, correct? You're here to put the test against systems of power, correct? You are lying to us.
President Roosevelt's 1942 executive order allowed the forcible removal of people of Japanese descent from their homes.
You're right. And how do we look upon that act today? How long did that last as law, custom, and appropriate behavior in this country? Can you believe that there were laws and actions taken in the past that are now defunct and reviled on reflection? Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. And your point being what?
120,000 people were detained in internment camps. Most of them were American citizens.
You're correct. And you know of that day each year where we celebrate that event, don't we? Right? You know that day off we get from school and work and everything where we get to celebrate internment camp day because it is such a storied event in America's history. You lament the lack of progress, and yet you want to dwell on the worst elements of our history as though they are still celebrated today, and they aren't lessons that we have had to take a dire toll from and have never repeated. I don't know if you're aware, but Roosevelt's directive is defunct.
It has happened here.
It has happened here. You're right. It has happened here. '80 some odd years ago. But yeah, it has happened here.
It can happen here.
Yes, if all of us lost our senses and all the laws were ignored and the very fiber of this country was just thrown out the window by people who say that democracy doesn't work, some other political system needs to come into play. Yeah, you're right. It could happen here again. There is a greater than 0% chance that, given the right circumstances, the worst parts of our history could be repeated again. And so we have to be vigilant to fight against those forces and those people who would see those kinds of things come to pass in the name of virtue. Now, do you want to talk about any kind of thinking or forces from history that might lead to those things again if they were to infect this country in any major way?
Again.
Heather
Tanana is a professor at the University of California, Irvine.
Oh, good. California academia, my favorite.
She leads the Universal Access to Clean Water for Tribal Communities initiative.
Okay.
Her research estimates 48% of Native American households on reservations don't have access to sufficient sanitation or clean water.
Okay. So, whose responsibility is that? Aren't Native American reservations actual democracies? I mean, okay, well, I guess I have to ask, how much government intervention do you want to have on Native American reservations?
And according to the annual Point in Time survey.
Wait. Speaking of point, what was the point of that statistic?
Over 650,000 people in the U.S.
650,000 out of 300 million. Okay.
Were unhoused.
650,000 out of 300 million are homeless. I mean, I would prefer the number was 0, but 650,000 out of 300 million. How does that compare to other similar countries in the world? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking sincerely. I don't know. But
in 2023.
In 2020. Wait. Under the Biden administration? Oh, okay. What did the statistic about clean water on Native American reservations mean?
That's a 12% increase over the previous year.
Wait, what about water on Native American reservations?
As cities and towns grapple with the lack of affordable housing, the recent Supreme Court decision in Johnson v. Grants Pass criminalizes sleeping outdoors.
Okay. So first off, before I get to my bingo card, Assassin the Gray, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Scribelight, there is long overdue need for a square labeled lying my assets off. I'm trying to think, did we ever have a card or not a card, a square for like something like that, like absolute untruth or something, or false? I'm reaching back in my memory. I don't remember. Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes it's difficult to parse out, and sometimes an outright lie is not that common in TEDx's. You know, I expect people to massage their presentation towards their point. I have criticisms about how certain presentations are structured. Outright lies are sometimes a little bit harder to say for sure. So I get what you're saying, but there's plenty of, I think there's more, the way the card is right now with all the different kinds of categories of mistruths or shady points and things. I think there's a better diversity without just saying that's a lie. No, we got like, like attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, or contradicts own point or argument, or anecdote that probably never happened, and so on. But thank you, Assassin of the Great. Let's see. Weightless example. Water quality on Native American reservations. Why did she bring that up? What did it have to do with anything before? What did it have to do with anything after? I don't know. But there it is.
The sobering truth.
Yeah. Oh, truth. You want to give us a truth? Okay, what's a sobering truth? I mean, I got a pepper jack here. Let's see if this does a magic bullet.
About our democracy.
We constitutional republic
is that it is messy.
That's why we have a constitutional republic. Again, you're a journalist, right?
It holds both hope and disappointment, justice and historical inequality.
Okay, you know what? Justice and historical inequality. Okay, how did we address those historical inequalities over time? Right? With new laws, new justice. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a change, but it was also a confession. It was a confession that we've been doing it wrong up to that point, and it was a promise and a pledge to do better as a country going forward. That's what laws and new laws usually are. They're an admission of human failing and a coming together of society to say, we're going to work to a better ideal for ourselves. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 did not cure racism. It acknowledged that racism is something that can find its way into legitimate institutions in our country, and it needs to be routed out when it's found, amongst several other discriminations. It's so frustrating. You have somebody who's representing themselves to be a truth teller, and she gets basic facts wrong about how this country works, and she's ignoring whole swaths of any other perspective than what she believes to be the right one. This is why people do not trust the mainstream media.
On more than one occasion, it has broken my heart.
Oh, well, grow up.
But democracy represents something authoritarianism does not.
Oh, really? Really? So if you had an actual democracy where the most highly populated, densest states in the Union were constantly winning all votes and arguments, there's no whiff of authoritarianism there. I mean, if you say so.
Possibility.
Possibility. Okay, so if there was an actual democracy in this country, what possibility would the population of, say, Oklahoma have in really having any voice in any decisions made on a federal level when California and New York are overriding everybody? You tell me.
My father was born in 1938 in Macon, Georgia, to sharecroppers.
Okay.
He contracted polio at a young age, and he was sent to a hospital many miles away from his family. He was separated for long enough that he was the youngest in his family when he left, and he was old enough to have a younger brother who could stand on his own by the time he returned.
Yeah, polio was a scourge, and thank goodness for the vaccine that was eventually created to fight it. But back when there wasn't one, boy, howdy. Horror stories. I heard stories from my grandmother about children in her neighborhood that got it was one of those things, you know, a bunch of kids went to the swimming pool one day and half of them came out crippled for the rest of their lives. It just, thank goodness we progressed into having developments that fought those kind of things. Yeah.
The polio left my father with one leg that was severely atrophied and shorter than the other. He'd walk with a pronounced limp for the rest of his life.
Well, statistically speaking, he was fortunate. I mean, it's a, you know, thin silver lining such as it is, but I'm glad he was able to be mobile at least.
The one school available to Black children was several miles away, too far for him to walk. And my grandmother, his mother, who was widowed, she worried about how my father would make his way in the world without the type of education that would allow him to do work that didn't require heavy physical labor.
Okay. I'm where is this going? I mean, I'm assuming we're still going to be dwelling on historical injustices and so on of the 1940s and 50s. But okay, this has to do some law was passed or something.
But then a family friend
Uh-huh.
told her about a school in Detroit for children with
Okay.
disabilities.
How old? Okay, I lost the plot here. How old was he at this point in time? He was still going to school for, so I'm guessing he was in his early teens, something. Okay, I don't know. If she mentioned what age range he was at this point, I must have missed it.
A school where my father could get the education he needed.
Okay.
So my grandmother packed up
Hmm.
the family and
Hmm.
moved to Detroit so my father could attend that school.
That's a very brave thing to do.
Later, he graduated from a special public high school in Detroit, Cass Tech, a
Hmm.
school I'd later graduate from as well.
Okay. And
And while he was there, he trained to be a drafter. Now,
okay.
drafters created the master drawings that outlined the design specifications for cars. And back then, it was done by hand. It was very intricate, detailed work.
Yes, I think I actually have a couple of draftsmen in my family tree. Hmm.
While he was training to be a drafter, it was before
Hmm.
the automotive companies hired Black workers for these white and gray collar jobs. If you worked at
Hmm.
the automotive companies, it was likely on the assembly line.
Yeah, gosh, times before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yeah, they were pretty bad back then. Yep. And
Work my father couldn't do with the complications from his polio.
right,
But
but
in 1964,
1964. What happened in 1964?
the Civil Rights Act passed.
It did. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm glad you at least acknowledge it that things have actually changed since World War II.
It ended segregation in public spaces and it
Mhm.
barred employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin.
It did. And boy, if only it were still in force today. May I introduce you to DEI? But that's a whole other story that I've covered for years now. Anyway.
That led to General Motors opening its drafting department to Black workers, and my father was
Uh-huh.
one of the first Black drafters hired by the company.
Oh, okay. So something in this country, the mechanisms of our constitutional republic, allowed the law to change for the better and consequently improve the lives of millions of Americans, both then and going on to the future. Wow. Uh-huh.
He'd worked there for about 30 years until he
Oh,
retired.
wow. Okay. Good
That
for him.
job
Hmm.
allowed my parents to buy a home.
Yeah. If only that were possible today. Boy, oh boy. I would love to own my own home. You know, I don't live an extravagant lifestyle. I don't, blow my money on cigarettes and booze all the time. I mean, a little booze here and there, but not any great degree, you know. I don't have some fancy car. I don't have a lot of vices or something. I can't afford to buy a home. And not unless I go off far, far, far off into the distance somewhere, away from anything that I'm familiar with or my family or off to another state or something. Yeah. Cost of living, man. It's a killer.
Providing us with safe and secure housing.
Boy, those are the days, huh?
It provided an income that supported them in raising their 7 children.
But jeez. All right. Well, they were certainly living the American dream at that point. Congratulations to your family.
It gave us access to health care. It helped pay for college educations for my siblings and me.
Great. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on how somehow this leads to a deterioration of democracy.
In the space of a single generation,
Yeah.
my family's story was rewritten in so many ways.
Wow. So our constitutional republic actually paid off. Huh. Strange. Okay. And then I'm waiting for the and then. And if there is an and then or something similar, Dramatic Squirrel will make an appearance.
When I first took over the nationally syndicated radio show 1A, people
Sales pitch for product or service. Sales pitch for product or service. Okay. All right. A little bit of a brag there. That's fine. She did a thing. She accomplished a thing. All the same. Sales pitch for product. Derek LaRue. Hello, Derek LaRue. Thank you so much, Derek. Appreciate it. As always, for your continued support and generosity. Nice to see you. Hope you're having a good evening and hope you're enjoying the show. Thank you as always. But yes, she took over a nationally syndicated something 1A. First Amendment. The First Amendment, huh? Well, interesting. All right. Yeah. Tell me more.
When I first took over the nationally syndicated radio show 1A, people asked me what I wanted the show to be.
Well, with a name like 1A, I would assume it's about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, topics like that, or relating to, etc. Well, having various people on to talk about things from different perspectives. That's what I'd do if I had a show called 1A. Unless it refers to like an apartment, like the apartment it's broadcasting out of or something. That'd be kind of a weird. What kind of show would you have if it was called 1A and it just related to an apartment, like apartment living, like topics on living in an apartment, or just like in today's episode, I'm going to go to this corner of the kitchen. Let's talk about what's in this corner of the kitchen. Well, let's see. There's a dust bunny under there. The linoleum is yellowed today, and that's its natural color. It's not because it's dirty. It's just from the 70s. That'd be a weird thing if you just had an entire like podcast series just exploring different nooks and crannies of your apartment episode by episode. I might have to do that.
And I said, I want it to be a place where America asks itself what it wants to be.
Those are called elections. I've never heard of your nationally syndicated show before, so okay.
There are many answers to that question.
You're right, but apparently, according to your own very cursory statistical analysis, the youth of America, only 9% think the correct way.
But some answers allow more of us to feel like our stories are part of the American story.
Okay, and as positive and inspiring a story as your family's history was, what does that have to do with your radio show? Because again, and I know what happens when you assume, I am assuming that if you're going to predicate your radio show name drop with your own family's history of struggle and then prosperity, it's going to have something to do with the radio show now, right? It's not going to be like the Native American fresh water situation where you just bring it up and it never has anything to do with anything again, is it?
This not quite 250-year saga of progress and peril, forward movement and backward stumbling.
Yeah, again, welcome to methodical, slow change. It can be frustrating, but it's healthier than knee-jerk reactions. That's why we have a constitutional republic and not a direct democracy.
Division and union.
Uh-huh.
The story I return to when my faith in this country is shaken.
Uh-huh.
When I feel democracy teetering on the brink. It's my family story.
Okay, so Your family's story was one of your father's illness and struggle and education and eventual prosperity. And now when your faith is shaken, you think of your family's story. Okay. And
My grandfather fighting for a country that had yet to recognize his humanity.
uh-huh.
The perseverance of my grandmother, moving her family across the country so my father could get an education.
Okay, you've already told us this. This is now just filler, but okay, yes.
The fact that my father gained access to a public education
Uh-huh.
that accommodated his needs as a student.
Is this like that little previously on thing at the beginning of a Netflix show that I can hit a button and skip over?
That in 1955, the polio vaccine was licensed in the US thanks to a national effort to fight the disease, ensuring that the illness that had a profound effect on my father's life would not affect the lives of his children.
Yes, okay. This has what to do with democracy?
But the Civil Rights Act meant for my family's prosperity.
Uh-huh. Again, is this a clip show now of something that just happened 5 minutes ago?
Allowing my father, with his skill and hard work alongside my mother's partnership,
Yes, I know the emotional labor must be very heavy for you here.
and vigilance, that it allowed them to build something beautiful
For their 7 kids. Yeah, okay. And
and enduring for our family.
yes, okay, we got it before.
The simple fact is, I would not be on this stage
Uh-huh.
talking
If there weren't a TEDx platform. Oh, wait.
about democracy
Uh-huh.
if the power of democracy hadn't been applied in creating greater equality for those of us to whom it had been previously denied.
Again, democratic processes within a constitutional republic. But okay, I take your meaning. I take your meaning, right? The mechanisms of this country led to the eventual betterment of people's lives and yours in particular through slow, methodical, sometimes very frustrating change and progress, because that is a healthier way to move a society than with knee jerk, snap to actions that would be far more authoritarian otherwise. Okay, so the foundations of this country and the fruits that they bore to you and your family line give you hope. All right. And
Our story shows what can happen at the intersection of choice, policy, and strong institutions. It shows that within a vibrant democracy, change is possible.
right. So why are you leaning on the worst of the worst with slavery and the internment camps? Things change. It was a pretty good movie, actually. But aside from that, uh, yeah, this country has evolved bit by bit, year by year, generation by generation. It has evolved. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the frustrating. Sometimes in ways people want it to, in ways that people don't. Sometimes it depends on opinion. Sometimes it depends on belief. This is how we evolve as a country. This is why the Constitution is a living document that can be changed, though, through a whole lot of hoops to get there, because again, we're trying to avoid and have the mechanisms in place to at least disincentivize or mitigate the threat of authoritarianism. Unless, of course, you keep allowing things like executive orders to occur and pseudo laws being put into place, et cetera, and so forth. But anyway, that's another complaint altogether. Now there's sirens in the background. I probably said something wrong. The YouTube police are coming after me. Anyway, yes, your family story gives you hope. The country can change and become better over time, etc., and so forth. You have 2 minutes left, and
Authoritarianism seeks to remove that possibility.
Okay, now we're back to authoritarianism. Okay, where is the threat of authoritarianism? Give me an active example, because if you don't know it, January 6th, however big a blip on the radar you want to give it, was not a celebrated event by most of this country. Charlottesville was not an event celebrated by most of this country. Those are the only two examples you've brought up so far that you say are examples of our road to authoritarianism. So, if both of those events, in one way, shape, or form, have been either rejected, reviled, or dismissed by people as either terrible or unimportant, what have you got?
If we allow our active participation in this democracy to be derailed by our disillusionment, we leave space for those with authoritarian proclivities to gain ground.
I would honestly, and I mean this sincerely, no joking here whatsoever. Again, I don't know when this was recorded. I would love to know what our speaker thinks about the anointment of Kamala Harris to the Democratic nomination. I would love to know what she thinks of an absolute, unmitigated absence of a democratic process that in any other circumstance should have selected the nominee for the Democratic Party. I really, really would like to know what she thinks about that event. Does she see it as a problem, or would she somehow rationalize it away? I'd love to know.
If we support elected officials or those who hope to gain office as they scapegoat vulnerable groups or deny election results.
Yeah, okay. Anybody, I mean, you brought up, I think she brought up Georgia before, didn't she? Like her family originally came from Georgia. Was there anybody in Georgia that actively denied and made a career out of denying election results? Can we think of anybody that did that not too long? Gosh, I don't know. I'm blanking. I wonder what our speaker has to say about something like that could occur, say, down in Georgia.
That space for possibility contracts.
Okay. Well, I mean, fundamentally, she's not wrong, right? If we did have a great threat of authoritarianism in this country, where like a government institution or several, disparate institutions of government were to, I don't know, tell the entire population where they could go and when they could do business and how they could behave and what they had to wear and what chemicals they had to put in there. I mean, if we did exist in such a place at such a time, under such circumstances, it would be probably a pretty crappy place to live. Yeah. Thank goodness we haven't had to deal with that. But, 2017 and January 6th, they're the worst things that ever happened to this country in recent times.
And if we stand by or even cheer on those who promise to turn the power of their office against their supposed political enemies.
Yeah. Imagine that.
That space for possibility narrows to a sliver.
You're correct. And we're not going to talk about Sliver, the Sharon Stone movie, even though the soundtrack to that film is great. The movie is not that great. But unless you were into Sharon. I mean, I can understand why people would be into Sharon. That's basically the only thing that sold that movie was Sharon Stone and everybody expecting another Basic Instinct. I mean, there's a little bit of that. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted by things I find far more entertaining.
That's how fascism gets the job done.
That's how fascism gets the job done. Okay. I can only imagine who you're talking about or intimating when you bring up fascism and authoritarianism. Because I can only imagine. Because you won't say the words for some reason.
It comes down to what we want.
No, it comes down to what you want. You are speaking for yourself here. You're not giving equal time to different perspectives. There is one way to go, and the other way is not permissible. And gosh, there's kind of a there's a word for that. There's a word for my way or no way. There's it's just not coming to me. I can't imagine what it is.
These United States of America, as messy and as troubled as it has been.
Messy and troubled. Yes, when you have 50 disparate populations with different concerns and different philosophies on things. And yeah, our mess is a good thing. Our mess has gotten us to where we are, has gotten you on that stage.
What we want it to be today and tomorrow and tomorrow. A place with the possibility for change and evolution.
Yeah. So why would anybody vote for continuation of the Biden administration?
A place where we can make things better if we, the people, demand it.
Better is subjective.
Or
will
we cede our democracy?
You mean our constitutional republic?
To those who would limit our ability to course correct.
Who are you talking about? Why are you being so cryptic? If you want to give out a warning, you've already given out 2 examples of the worst. It's pardon me, 3. Right, the internment camps. Well, I guess no. You did mention slavery. You didn't talk much about it, but slavery, the internment camps, Charlottesville, and January 6th. So why aren't you being more specific? What warning are you giving to people right now in the current moment?
When those course corrections are in service to our collective good.
Collective good, you say? Oh, okay.
That is the question.
That is the question? Oh, okay. Shakespeare says otherwise, but okay.
Who will we choose to be?
No, it's to be or not to be. And who will we choose? Who will we choose to be? Again, this all sounds very hive-mindy, doesn't it?
Thank you.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a big auditorium. That is a big auditorium. Interesting. Okay. Well, there you go. Whatever that was and whatever it was about. I mean, she didn't specify, so I can only imagine. And so I have to fill in the blanks with my imagination. It's like a theater of the mind, something like that. Anyway, let's move on to the bingo card. This is the bingo card as I have it. I'm going to go over it one more time by myself. If you guys have arguments for squares to be circled, hold on to them. I'll get to you momentarily. Let's see, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not explicitly, strangely enough. Word salad. I mean, I understood what she was saying. That's a tough one because there were so many diversions and detours. Actually, you know what the word salad part was? It was repeating everything in summary that she had just told us in the paragraphs preceding her summary. Like we'd forgotten or something, her family history and so on, which we just heard about ad nauseum. So I'm going to circle it for that. Mind reading assumes motives. Yeah, anybody who doesn't think like I do is an authoritarian. Anybody who doesn't agree with me is obviously on the wrong side of history, so on and so forth. A list. I mean, she did list off several things over the course of this. She didn't give a formal list, so I might leave that open for you guys. Marginalization. Yeah, vulnerable communities. Things like she said that phrase and similar ones to it over the course of the presentation, circling that one. Patriarchy. No. I mean, she in her talking about her grandfather and her father and so on didn't really represent patriarchy. It's just family stories. So that doesn't really count in my mind. I'm open to arguments otherwise. Contradicts own point or argument. Constitutional republic. I don't know how many different ways I can say it. Feminism, no. Likewise to patriarchy, she didn't really dwell on gender roles or power disparities all that much, as far as I can recall. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, no. Anecdote that probably never happened. Okay, anecdote that probably never happened. Again, I don't have any reason to doubt her family story. None of that sounded too good to be true or anything, especially given the circumstances. The internment camps did happen. Charlottesville did happen. January 6th did happen. These things did happen. These are all facts and events that occurred. The statistics that she threw out there, whether they were relevant or not, I can't say that they were false. So I'm not quite sure she gave us an anecdote, like a too perfect anecdote. As far as I can recall, if you guys have something otherwise, by all means. Argumentative non sequitur. Okay, now here's one. Again, this is why weightless example and argumentative non sequitur really sometimes they overlap in so many ways. It's like they're practically the same square. I think I'm going to have to consolidate them. I've talked about this before. I either have to remove one and just like make it sort of like systemic / institutional, non sequitur / weightless example might be the square. Because my first thought is, why bring up Native American water quality? It has nothing to do with anything. It had no connection to democracy in her presentation. She didn't bring it up again. She didn't tie it to anything. So it is both a weightless example and an argumentative non sequitur. So I'm hesitant to double dip on the same item for two squares. And we keep running into this, or I keep running into this. So I think I'm gonna have to consolidate those squares. So in the Discord server, under the TEDx section, if there are arguments for new squares to take one or the other's place, I'll open that up to the floor. So I'm not, for the sake of this presentation, I'm open to circling it for that item, the Native American water quality, if people are cool with it. But I'm going to wait until I hear otherwise from you guys, because I'm always get a little iffy on double dipping on the same item. Anyway, next, privilege. Well, I mean, over the course of her family story, it was obviously the case that there was a disparity of privilege. And she might have even said the word, and I might have missed it, between opportunity and education and so on. So, yes, it was an element of her presentation. Collectivize his own demographic. Now, this might be controversial. The closest I can think she came was talking about being a journalist. That's it. Otherwise, every other story she told that you might otherwise say, oh, she's talking about all black people or something. Now, she focused really specifically on the events of her family's life. And even though she talked about events that did change the course of opportunity for minorities in this country and women, she didn't really stand there as a representative of a larger whole than just talking about herself and her family, except for the journalism part at the beginning. But I don't know that she dwelled on that long enough or completely enough that it qualifies. So I'm going to leave that for you guys to tell me. Self-vilification or wretchedness. No, I don't recall anything that she referred to herself in any kind of disparaging light, jokingly or otherwise. So I don't think so. Economic disparity, yes, in the course of her family story, that did come up, especially with the economic opportunity that the job at the auto plant provided. Benevolent condescension, boy howdy. Boy howdy. Anybody who doesn't agree with the way that I think is wrong, and obviously an authoritarian. And I'm not even going to acknowledge any other events or any other political movements that have taken place in the last just 10 years alone. So, yeah, just a little bit. And with that.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Right?
Yeah!
There's our first bingo. Moving on. Plays victim. See, this is where, again, I'm not sure that I know there's probably an argument in there somewhere, but most of her stories were about actual things and actual circumstances that happened to her family and also actual boons and benefits that occurred. She talked about she wouldn't be on this stage if it weren't for all these things that happened. I know there's probably an argument there. Again, I will leave that open to you guys. And lastly, microaggressions or unconscious bias. Well, she certainly had an unconscious bias towards anyone who doesn't think like she does, anyone who doesn't want to see the country go the direction that she wants it to. She had her own unconscious bias, and especially when it came down to being a quote unquote journalist and reporting the facts to us. Yeah. So with that, that's where I'm at for the card. It's open the floor to you guys. If you have arguments for squares to be circled, put them in the chat now. If you've already put one in and I've missed it, please just repost it, and I will scroll up a bit to get to some as I see them. Let's see. Looking for a argument. Okay, Advocates Diaboli. Her talk about people not talking about January 6th when all we hear is that anecdote that yeah, no, you're right. No, you're right. That's true. Yeah, and that really, I mean, that stood out to me at the time. Of course, I made the big deal about it. It's like, no, I never hear that it wasn't a big deal. I always hear from everybody and their brother in the media and otherwise that it was the worst thing since 9/11 or worse than 9/11. So, correct. I agree.
Bingo.
What? Bingo! Yeah!
Of course, of course.
There's our second bingo. All right. Let's see. What else do we have here? Advocatus, you're just like that kid in the class that always like raises their hand first and polishes an apple or something. She spoke about people of the past as used the word we as collectivizing a You're not wrong. And she also went on to talk about, who do we want to be? Yeah. Okay. You know what? Fair enough. She was speaking for a very broad demographic at that point. Okay. Advocatus, you're just teacher's pet, ain't you? That's what you are. Chicago Mike, argumentative non sequitur, bringing up the bad things that happened in the past. Okay, and the only reason I'm going to push back on that is because at the very least, I can give her credit that she did acknowledge that things changed and got better, which placed her on that stage. So her bringing up the bad old days, but then by example of her family showing how things changed and improved, at least she compared and contrasted in spirit, if not directly. That's my counterpoint for that particular argument. I'm happy to take rejoinders, or not rejoinders per se, but counterpoints. Kiro Soldier plays victim. Her father being not recognized as being a person even after coming home from World War II. That's not playing a victim. That's actually being victimized by the laws and the systems of the time. So that's That wasn't some like oh woe is me, feel sorry for me. Yeah, black soldiers coming back from World War II. No, they weren't. That was like coming back as a Vietnam veteran or something. You still came back to a country you fought for, and under law you were not considered an equal citizen. So that's not playing victim. I got to at least extend that benefit of the doubt there. Assassin the Grave, vital context about the car at Charlottesville. She means the guy in the car threatened by a liberal professor who leveled an AR-15 him. What? No, she's talking about 2017 Charlottesville. 2017 Charlottesville, not. I think we're talking about two different events. If I'm remembering correctly. Yep, you might have to. Okay, somebody's gonna have to clear it because maybe my brain is just all gobbledygook because we had that situation not too long ago where a guy, was it ran over? Okay, maybe I'm getting mixed up because there was that situation where somebody was at a protest and someone like had a rifle with them and the guy felt like he was threatened in his car and he either shot the guy or ran him over or something. Maybe I'm misremembering something. Advocatus again. A list. She listed the bad things that happened in the past. Informal, I know, but still a list. Yeah, and it's like I said, I was waiting for like steps to fix democracy or 3 things I learned from my family or something like that. I want to try to keep that as explicit as possible because, just naming things during the course of a presentation does not a list make, let's see. Abdicast, he took off because someone shot and hit Heather in the process. Okay. Well, I already circled leaves out vital context for something else. So that's already circled. So appreciate the argument, but square's already circled. So yeah, okay. It's been a long time since I had to think about Charlottesville. It's been a long time, so. Let's see. Any other arguments for squares to be circled? I know I'm being a little picky about a list, but I got to be a little picky about some things. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase now. Self-vilification or random plays victim. Yeah, argumentative non sequitur. Again, I really want to circle it for the Native American water quality thing. But I've already done that for weightless example. Unless somebody can think of another weightless example that can take over for that square, and then conceivably I can circle non sequitur. Let's see. Oh yeah, vital context was for the survey, right? Yeah, 9% of America's youth, only 9% of America's youth think the country's going in the right direction. Yeah, that doesn't tell us what the right direction is, according to each individual participant in that survey, but whatever. All right. Any other arguments, guys? Any other arguments? Let's see. While I'm waiting, I might as well put up the Discord server link now, just for the heck of it. Aha, a surprise. Surprise, Discord link is in the chat. I'll put it up again in a moment, but you can get yourselves ready if you want to say hello and give me the secret word so you can join the Discord server. Her dad having to move schools was a weightless example. No, because that fed into the story of her family's road to prosperity and opportunity, right? There was they were in the South, but a school in the North offered opportunities that were denied her family, or at least her father with his disability where they lived. And so their movement and their ability to move from one place to another to a place where there was an opportunity led to greater opportunities. So it does feed into the narrative she was giving us of the stories that give her hope for the future of the country changing for the better. So not a weightless example. That's my argument there. I know I'm arguing against my own benefit here. I could get another square out of this. Any other arguments otherwise, guys? Any other comments? Suddenly the comments froze. Whenever I don't see any comments in the chat for a couple of minutes, I think, uh-oh, is there a technical issue? Let's see. The homeless people was, oh, that's right. That's right. She brought, oh, that's very good. Yes. The homeless stats, there are 650,000 unhomed people in this country. She said that one right up against the Native American water rights. So ipso facto, choose one or lose one. That is also either an argumentative non sequitur or a weightless example. Very good. I kept thinking, there's something like picking at my brain. I was like, there's something else. There's something else here that we could use. There we go. All right. Good job. Good job. And You're Ridiculous Lunatic is the beer and smiley face. What hellscape is this? This is the that's not a hellscape. That's my home. Dang it. Look at that. Look at that beautiful, beautiful, gigantic, completely out of proportion Earth. And the little moon cave entrance thing there. This is not a hellscape. This is a majestic tranquility, a sea of tranquility, a majestic desolation. It's not a hellscape, jerk. Jeez. All right, guys. I think we are reaching the proverbial end of the line with the bingo card. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Not specifically enough that I can circle it, as far as I know. A list, again, no formal list. Patriarchy, no. Feminism, no. Attempt to coin, no. Self-vilification, no. And plays victim. As much as she talked about her family, she never really talked about herself all that much, except for her radio show and that she's a journalist. And that wasn't playing a victim. So, yeah. Anyway, everyone, I'm going to leave it there. As always, if you have arguments for squares to be circled after the show has concluded, or arguments for squares to be uncircled, I'll take those too. Please leave those in the comments if you're listening to this in the future. And if there is a good argument for a square to be circled after the show's concluded, I will do my best to acknowledge that comment in the chat and pin it, and also update the bingo card for posterity on the Discord server. And by the way, do you know there's a Discord server? I already put the link up once, but I'll put it up one more time. All I have to do is click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream, are not a bot, and are thus have earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is constitutional republic. I know it's a phrase, not really a word, but all the same, if you say that, I'll know that you actually watch the show. So just say hello, constitutional republic, and you will become a member of the Discord server. Elsewise, you can find me here on Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Sunday stream, where I'll talk about some stuff that happened over the course of the week, because it's a digest show now for the time being until I change my mind otherwise. Also, I did an ambush stream yesterday. If you missed it, and I can understand why you might, because it was a, ambush stream, talking about our old friend Robin DiAngelo and current events in her life and career. You can take a look at that on the channel right now. And as always, you can find me here next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence. I'll look at another off-brand TED Talk for information and education and entertainment, if you are a kind of mental masochist, as I apparently am. Otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers pinned to the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciate it. Otherwise, everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. I hope you have a good and calm Friday. If you're traveling, have safe travels. If you've got the Monday off for the holiday, I hope you do. Enjoy your holiday. If you don't, I hope your day at work is quiet and otherwise uneventful. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care and bye-bye.